Good morning, everyone. My name is Allison Charette, and this is Pablo over here on the piano, who just did that lovely music for us. I would like to invite you all to begin today by singing to help us arrive in our bodies. So if you would like to rise in body or spirit, we will sing our first hymn.
So we have a whole Greater Good worship service coming up on December 11th, where we will worship together and kick off that collection. But last week, the children and youth voted, so we're excited to announce with a video the winners.
Equicenter opened its doors with the adaptive riding program. We began with a handful of horses and a couple participants. We now have 30 horses in our herd and serve over 120 participants per week, ranging from 2.5 to 90 years old. And we have nearly 80 students on our wait list.
My name is Sarah McLaughlin, and I manage the HEAL program here at the Equicenter. HEAL stands for Horticulture and Equine Active Learning, and it's a program that combines all that the Equicenter has to offer, our horticulture and our horses, into one really great opportunity for any group or individual that's interested in participating.
The Expanding the Field program is an arts advancement opportunity for local high school students who are serious about their futures in the visual arts. Right now, we're seeking rising high school freshmen, sophomores, and juniors of African American, Latinx, and or Native American heritages, as well as any student who identifies as one of color, to apply for free classes, mentorship, networking, and studio admission at Flower City Arts Center in Rochester. The Expanding the Field program supports access to visual arts resources, increasing the diversity of college-level visual arts programs and future leadership in the professions of ceramics, printmaking and book arts, photography and digital arts, and much more. Right now, African Americans and people of color are severely underrepresented in the visual arts, and our aim is to change that.
Now, as we settle into this sacred time and place, I invite you to take a deep breath and light a chalice wherever you are, and here in the sanctuary, Whitney will light ours. Please join me in the words. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and mysteries of this great gift. So I'm wearing one of my favorite stoles. It's hard to choose. They're all favorites, really. But this stole is the word for this piece of religious garb, for those who may not know. And I love it because it's rainbowy, and it's got this great heart right here. And so it really just screams Unitarian Universalism, right? We've got the rainbow of diversity of all kinds, but also of gender and sexuality, and the heart emphasizes how love is at the center of our tradition. But this stole was not always meant to be this way. My wife Ada got it for me as a birthday present, and when we were looking at stole designs, what we really were looking for was just a plain, not plain, but just the rainbow with no symbol or any other kind, just simple rainbow stole. And what the stole artists that we looked at, what we liked, they had was a stole that had a symbol here on this same stole. So we asked, could you remove that or change that? And she said, yes, no problem. I will get to work right away, just stitching that out or however fabric artists do their magic. And then she came back and said, actually, I've made a mark or a scratch or a tear of some kind. So I can give it to you that way, or here are a couple different symbols that you might put to cover that up. And one of them was the heart, and that was the obvious choice to go with. And so I think that's why we come to church. Because on our journeys of growth and transformation, sometimes we get torn or hurt or scratched up a little. And as we transform, we don't always become the person we think we're going to be. But as we go through the journey of transformation, we may find that love was at the center all along. And in the spirit of love and community, I invite you to rise, if you like, and greet your neighbor, perhaps with a wave or an elbow bump, just to welcome ourselves and each other into this space with all that we bring. right, thank you. Boy, are we ready for community here. We are ready for spiritual connection in community. You guys are all ready, but we got to do the worship service and then have the connection hour. Come on. All right. Wonderful to see so much energy. I know. That's got to be careful what we ask for, of course. At this moment, I would like to invite you now into a time of meditation, reflection, and prayer, beginning with a shared silence within this sanctuary and beyond. I invite you into your own breath. Great mystery which grounds us and surrounds us, divine presence known by many names and no name at all. In the calm of this hour set apart, this time made sacred by our intention and our attention and our connection with one another. It's time to be together, to affirm our values, to address the sacred, however known to each of us. In this hour, may we listen deeply to the still, small voice within and the voices guiding us from without. In the warmth of this community, this particular entanglement of human beings and voices and souls, with its common breath and heartbeat, with its diverse bodies and minds and hearts, may we open to the unfolding promise of transformation within us and among us as we practice what it is to be human, practice what it is to be spiritually connected to each other, to our deepest selves, and also to something larger than ourselves. In this moment made sacred, in this opportunity to witness to one another's lives and all that they hold, may we hold tenderly the grief among us this morning for any of those mourning lost loved ones, for those facing illnesses or other challenges, for those holding the grief for our changing and changed climate, for the grief of an ongoing and mutating pandemic, and for all the disruptions in our world of war, strife, and division. May we respond always with love. In this moment made sacred, let us turn our hearts to gratitude as well for small acts of kindness and grace that others bless us with, for each new day an opportunity for us to choose more compassion, greater gentleness, and larger love. For those veterans who dedicated their lives to service of our country, by which I mean its people and its highest values. For a nation where democracy has not yet been undone, for all the gifts of life surrounding us always, if sometimes obscured. May we open our hearts to such gift. May we be such gifts to each other, and may we return again and again to the quiet center of our deepest selves. Amen, and blessed be. We enter now into ritual to bring what is on our hearts and lay it on the altar of community and spirit. Honoring the complexities of life, bring to mind whatever grief, growth, or gratitude is alive within you. Online, you are invited to share it into the chat, and here in the sanctuary, you are invited forward to light a candle at one of the altars. If you would like an usher to bring a candle to you, please just raise your hand. May we now share in this ritual of community, care, and to witnessing to one another's hearts. All that we hold in our hearts for ourselves, for each other, and for the world is held in this community and by a love that will not let us go. Amen. Blessed be. Everything that our church does for ourselves and for others is made possible by what we bring to it. Each week, we practice shared generosity to support the work and witness of Unitarian Universalism in Rochester, and half of our Sunday offering goes to a partner organization working to create a more just and loving world. Today, we share our plate with Family Promise of Greater Rochester, which assists families at risk of or already experiencing homelessness to achieve sustainable independence. Family Promise is working towards a Rochester that sees affordable, decent, equitable housing as a human right, and in which every family has a place to call home. In the spirit of abundance and generosity, our offering will now be received with gratitude.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Good morning, oh, wow. It's live. Good morning, let me offer a prayer from a prophet, James Baldwin. You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read. It was books that taught me that the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive and who had ever been alive. Whether you open your eyes, say Ashe, Amen in this moment, I want you to feel those words. And empathy and sympathy, as we saw in the video, are very different. You see, empathy is a skill that can bring people together and make people feel included, while sympathy creates an uneven power dynamic and can lead to more isolation and disconnection. It's unfortunate, though, isn't it? Because given that sympathy is usually coming from a good place, but empathy is the ability to understand and echo what someone else feels. However, I want you to note this. Empathy doesn't mean that you imagine that you were in somebody's shoes. It doesn't mean that you are imagining yourself in that person's place. It is about trying to do that, because when we try to do that, what happens is we bring our own biases into the situation. Rather, It means that you can begin to understand and accept other people's feelings, even if they might not be the same feelings that you would have about the situation. Now, I'm going to digress for a moment, but stay with me. Compassion is empathy plus action. I'm going to say that again. Compassion is empathy plus action, and it is the practice of relating to others and as a result to ease their suffering. The winners of the grant are doing just that. They're offering compassion to ease another's suffering. It's also evident in the banners and the signs that you have around this building here, this place in which you gather. Compassion and empathy, however, both mean suffering with. One just has a component of action, but the other means we have to go in and tap into something that's deep within ourselves. But because compassion involves action, compassion seems to be the direction that is most preferable for us than empathy. Why? Because we don't like to go to the places that are the dark nights of our soul. We do not like to deal with the deep pain. And a term in which Brene Brown, who was a speaker underneath that video, she says sympathy and empathy are near enemies of one another. They look the same, but as she said, with sympathy, there is no connection. Just the opposite happens. Sympathy draws a clear line between the person that is suffering and ourselves, and if we are not careful, it can take a strong left turn and turn into pity. And when it turns into pity, what happens is we create a hierarchical relationship, and that is hardwired in our biology. Just read the book by Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene. And I want us to know and to be challenged today that really before us as a people is that empathy requires us to recall and reflect on the uncomfortable, to ask the difficult questions, to get a little messy. When we are recognizing feelings like frustration, nervousness, or confusion, can we begin to take on the perspective with another person? Can we choose empathy versus sympathy, or to be perfectly honest, complete disengagement? Because that's the most challenging part. And it is a challenge in the short term to get down into that place. But there is a long-term reward. It is far greater. Because people are not, when they are facing a challenge, they're not looking for your magic response. In actuality, they're just looking for someone who can come and be with them and feel like they are not alone. They are looking for someone who has been through the process or the challenge before, and they are definitely looking for connection. That should be the foundation of everything that we do in this world and in our homes, and most certainly in our nation if it was all right. Because when we engage with each other, when we lean into that work, we can be truly what you say in your mission to listen, be open, and serve. Because listening is the first thing that we must do in order to have empathy. We must begin to hold space for one another without judgment. We need to emotionally begin to connect with each other and communicating that really amazing message. You're not alone. I see you. Now, these actions of holding space, withholding judgment is not simple, and it most certainly isn't natural. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of difficulty conversation is that we just want to give people ease, right? We just want to fix it really quick. I am that person. But one of the things that stood out to me in that mission statement was just the word listen. Listen deeply to others and ourselves. Listen deeply to others and ourselves. Because I work in justice ministries, I've sat on panels to discuss different topics, and an activist within our community with Yoga for a Good Hood and others. Sometimes the activism is changing the world one downward dog at a time. But other times, it is having difficult conversations. And sadly, I have listened to many and varied areas and conversations with people around the issue of Black Lives Matter. Now, the same thing can be applied to conversations that I have had for being with the queer and trans and the persons of color context, the LGBTQIA2S, climate change. But the reactions about the statements that I'm going to move into at this point is around Black Lives Matter. When I look at social media outlets, or I look at news outlets, or even the places where we gather and worship, everything that I have heard is either rooted in ignorance, fear, but always a lack of empathy. Always a lack of empathy. We cannot have bold conversations and create bold belonging. That's one of your banners outside. We cannot cultivate empathy in this world if we do not address our pivot roots. Does anyone garden here? Who gardens here? Oh, wow. That's the first I've ever gotten that many hands in any place. So, pivot roots. Some plants have these pivot roots that go down deep and they spread out. Think of a dandelion, and they just can take over, and it's hard to pull them out. That's a pivot root. The pivot root of our nation is white supremacy culture. Period. Now, before I get any eye rolls, whether it's at home or here, I don't know. But white supremacy culture is a project of conditioning into toxic belonging. Let that sit with you. There are tenets written by Dr. Okun of white supremacy culture. And I want you to hear them because we all get caught up in it. This isn't someone saying you're a white supremacist unless that applies. But it is a culture in which we get caught up in. Perfectionism, sense of urgency, defensiveness, quantity over quality, worship of the written word, that there's only one right way, paternalism, either or thinking, power hoarding, fear of open conflict, individualism, I'm the only one, process is bigger, I need more, objectivity and a right to comfort. Now, I know no one here has any of those on that list. But I want you to think about that for in our own lives, because this culture is so powerful precisely because it's so present, and at the very same time, it is hard to pin down. These characteristics are damaging our communities. They have become the norms in which we live. They are damaging because they promote white supremacy thinking and they lack empathy. And because we all live within this culture, all of us get caught up. All of us. And it is sad that the desperately needed conversations that we need to have, the learning and the healing, the heart disease in which we have, in this nation, in our lives, in our families, we are not brave enough. Can we begin to lead with heart? I think that's perfect that that's on your stole today. To lead with heart, to be brave, to begin to lament with, really keen, to truly see each other. But we have to begin to listen to each other. And that's an action. It is not passive in any way. I just came back from, oh goodness, I'm sleep deprived, Minneapolis, late last night. I can't tell you, I was really grateful that that plane took off because a snowstorm was coming. But part of my work in the community, and particularly with leaders, is beginning to do some congregational experiments. And everyone starts with listening. Everyone begins with listening. Maybe it's a reading. Maybe then it broadens out to listening to each other. Maybe then it begins to broaden out to their congregational members, to the people in their neighborhood, and to begin to identify some themes that have surfaced. Listen, if we really want real connection, we have to begin to practice this empathy thing. We have to begin to be vulnerable, and we got to get grounded in our bodies. We have to drop the armor, the protective mechanisms that we all end up doing. We have to try on these skills and have a safe place to get messy. But even more so, we have to begin to honor each other's stories as sacred. That their truth is sacred. Now, I'm going to give you something that isn't in my notes, because it just hit me. We practice land acknowledgments as well in the Lutheran Church, but it still falls short. Where is the confession? Where is the acknowledgement of the harm that has been caused? Like really confessing that deep within ourselves. Because that is what drives connection. Like when we begin to acknowledge the pain that we have caused. You see, empathy fuels connection. And empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable one, if you're willing. Ashe and amen. Thank you. Y'all clap? That, I have never had that happen. Okay. All right.
Now I invite you all to rise and join us in singing our closing hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Ring with the horn
our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of a bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in this path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we meet thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our Lord, true to our native land.
Please remain standing and join me in the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And now I offer this blessing to you in the spirit of loving kindness, the metta prayer, the matri. May you be happy. May you be healthy or well. May you be safe. And may you be at peace. And may you offer that same blessing to your family, your friends, your community, and the whole world. Ashe. Thank you.